We're going to talk today about trusted data and how companies are using trusted data to build smarter products and more secure data networks. So this is such a timely topic, especially in light of all the news about several major security breaches this past year and all the challenges that we're seeing with vaccine distribution. But first, I want to take us back a couple of years to the aftermath of Cambridge Analytica, when many of these data privacy issues really kind of came to a head. You know, those events really uncovered some important issues around data privacy and control, and they highlighted how little visibility people really have into what companies are doing with their data. But I want to touch on kind of one thing in particular. I can't count the number of times I've heard a company say, well, you can trust that your data is safe because we store it on an encrypted database. Last month, Brian Jackson, our COO, did a really nice job of showing us why this strategy is problematic from a security perspective. But there's another problem with it, and that's that they're basically saying, well, you can trust the data because you can trust us. But what if you can't trust them? What if you don't even really know who they are? How can you trust the data if you have no way of trusting the entity that controls it? So there are a number of emerging technologies that are really designed to make it possible to trust data even when you have no way of trusting the source, or even if you don't know the source at all. Blockchain is certainly a part of that, but the ability for blockchain to enable trusted data really kind of depends on how it's implemented. So typically, data security is managed at a file or a database level, like you see here on the left. Sometimes blockchains are layered on top of that to manage who's allowed to access the database, but the data management itself, it's still pretty conventional. So what trusted data does is bring these security layers down to each individual data point so that the security is enforced no matter who controls it, no matter where the data goes, and no matter how it's combined with other data. The second thing that trusted data does is provide context. So if I'm going to trust a piece of data, I want to know that it's secure and hasn't been tampered with, but I also want to know more about it. So let's take a doctor's medical degree, for example. If you see that a doctor got their degree from Harvard, how do you know that that's actually really true? They could have just put that in. If a doctor just claimed they graduated from Harvard, you might want to see a secondary verification, like say from a credentialing company, in order to trust that that's actually true. But if that info came directly from Harvard, you might be more willing to trust it even without that independent verification. That verification, the source, the history, all of that is context. And that context is really important to understanding a piece of data and being able to trust it. So in other words, trusted data is data that understands itself. It has intelligence just built right into it. The last thing that trusted data does is package up all of that security and context in a way that allows that piece of data to become mobile. So trusted data can be shared and moved and even monetized without losing any of the security or context that gives it that trust. So there are a number of emerging standards like W3C, verified credential standards, that are really designed to provide a framework for building these trusted data packages. The net in all of this is that trusted data allows us to move from an environment where you're forced to trust the entity that controls the data into an environment where you can trust the data itself. And that's really important for a couple of reasons. The first is that trusted data brings intelligence into the data itself, like I was talking about. So as you're building these AI and deep learning models, that deep level of intelligence is super valuable. Not only do you know a piece of data and where it came from and how it's evolved over time and whether or not it's been verified. So let's say a certain type of data that seems to be updated or changed a little too often in kind of a weird way. That could actually mean that there's a problem with my workflow that's causing some data entry issue. But without that history or context of that piece of data, you'd never really know that that's an issue. It just wouldn't come up. The second reason that trusted data is so valuable is that it's really the backbone for how we enable these smart, trusted networks where really complex processes can be automated, because you don't have to manually verify all of the data. That verification is built right in. So things like credentialing and rev cycle and contracting, they become a lot easier to manage with trusted data.